We break news on this podcast. We have a team of correspondents across the world telling us things. This is from Jed, the Real Fit Coach on Instagram. He sent over a scoop. So Des Linden, who has won the Boston Marathon, raced the Olympic Marathon twice, and has the world record for the 50K in 2 hours and 59 minutes, she is lining up for the USATF National Championship at the Tunnel Hill 50 miler. And I assume she's trying to break Courtney Olson's record from last year. So pretty big news, and a legitimate runner, probably a little bigger than the trail running space, lining up for a trail world record. The record currently is 5 hours, 31 minutes, 56 seconds, set by Courtney Olson. Last year, it's in November, so that'll be a big thing to watch. I mean, we have an Olympic marathoner trying for a world record at a 50. Okay, let's get back to the show. Today on the podcast, I'm going to get into a little more of a personal topic, and I think it'll be a good way for you to get to know who I am as a talking head. This is the Free Outside podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Garmeyer, and we are diving into the advantages and disadvantages and the things I learned from my path to ultra running. So I began my life as a runner, I guess, back in high school. So I did cross country. I did it freshman year. It went okay. I was on varsity. I ran okay. But I got bullied by the kids a year older than me. The next year, I got bullied even more, so much that I hated it and I quit. And I kind of just didn't think about running or do any until I did some triathlons in college, and I ran a few half marathons just to stay in shape. But that's where running slowly came back. But in the meantime, my freshman year of college was fine, but I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I quit. I quit school after 1 year and, well, about a year and a half. And then I thru-hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, and that changed my life. It was where I learned about backpacking. I went on to hike the Pacific Northwest Trail, do all the Colorado 14ers, hike the Calendar Year Triple Crown, the Great Western Loop, did a bunch of FKTs, and then I got into ultras. Cocodona 250, it was actually my second ever ultra. I had done 150K in Colorado before that. So right from 50K to 250 miles, but there were many FKTs along the way. So, I mean, Cocodona 250 is really just a thru hike with aid stations that are trail magic anyways. So my backpacking experience, it really allowed me to see movement and style in a different way of like, you are out there, you are present for a time that you cannot even conceptualize. So the Calendar Year Triple Crown, 8,000 miles. I couldn't think 8,000 miles down the road. So it was a really good practice, and I had to be in the moment and just be in the day I'm in and not worry about yesterday, not worry about tomorrow, but set myself up for success in those moments. And that's very much like an ultra is. And so the biggest gap that this history kind of had was speed. So obviously for 10 to 15 years, I didn't really do any speed workouts. So this is the low-hanging fruit, the easiest way for me to progress and to get better. And that's kind of where the focus has been, because I have so much endurance. I have as big a base as anyone at any start line that I can draw on that, but getting faster and able to move comfortably at a faster pace has been this long time battle. Speed workouts are not so natural to me. I developed endurance, slow twitch muscles and efficiency at low speeds first. And then now I'm trying to add in going faster. I think it's helped that I've climbed so much, because that can translate into musculoskeletal benefits and just hiking with weight on my back. But the act of moving fast has been hard to grasp, because I didn't work on turnover for so many years. Running was sort of something I did in training for FKTs. I lived in Tahoe one winter and I was going to go for the Arizona Trail. I was actually on the Barkley Marathon's waitlist that year, but I didn't get in, and I was going to either do that or go for the Arizona Trail record. And so what I did is I just ran at slow pace in Tahoe for, 10 hours a week. I'd get a break during the day. I'd just run up a nearby hill at 7,000 feet altitude. And that's where I kind of noticed that this ability to run really does translate to FKTs and thru hiking as well. I think that ability to push your comfortable pace up higher just makes everything else go smoother. And so I started building in some structured workouts, especially tempo work. It was hard to grasp much shorter of intervals, and I think that's just really come back a lot more into vogue in the last 4 or 5 years. This would be like 2018 or so when I was starting to push that tempo effort, like a mile hard or something like that. And I noticed these massive gains in what I could achieve when through hiking or when going for an FKT. So I really began to accept that I have to put in this part into my training. I think the fittest I've ever been was with this combo of hiking and running. So I just want to throw that out there that balance is everything, especially when you're going for the longer and longer events. Especially if you're going for a marathon, it's very centered on running because you're probably running the whole way. But there is a thing, it's actually called jeffing, where you run walk. So I think Jeff Galloway maybe created this, so it's kind of ironic that I've done a lot of walking and running. Maybe I'm meant to be. Do you guys ever believe that you just live into whatever your name is gonna be, like you become that name? I don't know. Sometimes it's interesting to think about that because if Jeffing is this run walk style and my whole career and life has been built on run walk style for the most part, it's pretty ironic. Okay, the next topic is pacing. So 24 hours is a really good 100 miler for most people, most places, most events. And that's really a walking pace. Like it's pretty amazing that it's not that far removed from walking when you're saying you run an ultra marathon. So I think this is where it's that really strategically run the downhills and the flats, but also be able to draw on that hiking and uphill experience has really made a huge impact. So I don't think there's benefit to hiking up 10% or less grade. I think you should try to run it because then you can get really good stimulation for your lungs, your breathing, pushing up your heart rate, that kind of thing. With the exception of if that's in a longer run, it's really good to move to that style. But I do think there's tremendous benefit in hills that are in that 15% plus range where you do have to hike them and you can get almost a threshold tempo level response from your body without having to turn over your legs and exert your muscles to that same level. So I do a lot of uphill treadmill in the winter here, and we have a treadmill that goes up to 30% grade. And I can get my heart rate up to like 170 just by hiking. You throw that thing at 3 miles an hour, that is pretty hard to hold on. So I think that's a huge benefit about hiking. It's added this other layer to training where without the risk of injury, you can still push your body to this level and this heart rate and gain fitness that way. And kind of substituting in some of those junk miles for something more specific like climbing because it's almost a strength workout that meets an aerobic workout without having any explosive movements, which is what raises the risk of injury. So that's been something I've been really keen to draw on and throw into my plan, which is why I kind of enjoy self-coaching myself. I had a couple different coaches over the years and it just works good. So what I actually do, I talked about this when I had Alyssa Clark on the podcast. It's hard to self-coach, but what I did is I created a totally different profile on Training Peaks, the software I use to coach athletes, and I treat myself as an athlete. Like I go back and forth in the comments with myself. I open it up on my computer. I go into my actual athlete page and training log, go into it as a coach, schedule out as if I'm my own athlete there. And then throughout the week, I can check in and make little adjustments, but it'd be just like I was texting my coach to make that adjustment. And it really made it more seamless because I had a hard time speaking up when I had a coach. So that's totally on me. But that's also a little way that I coach myself. I don't know how we got on that tangent, but the downside of this pacing and the strong sense of pace and effort level that I got from through hiking is that it makes it more of a I'm more risk averse when like going out hard in a race because I've always got that mindset of like, I got to be out here for months. And maybe I know that it's only a day long race, but in the back of my mind, it's like, preserve yourself. You never want to feel like you're that close to the edge because that edge just will creep up on you if you are standing on a kind of FKT or through hike. If you get too close to that edge, once you fall off, disaster strikes. So it's that really big reluctance to push into that zone of really feeling rough, but knowing I can push through it. And it's also made it really hard for me to rely on crew because I'm so used to being self-sufficient. Like, should it need anything from anyone, it's the safest way to go about a hike or an FKT or I don't know, a race or something that it's just so much more comfortable to carry everything myself. And then, this is going to be year 5 of Cocodona. And that's a key part of it. A key learning is going to have to be relying on crew and pacers to do their job, which you've set them up for success, but you have to just let go of some of those things. So that is what I'm mentally going to be working on over the next 5 weeks, probably when this comes out, regarding Cocodona, on letting go of some of those things that make me perform worse because I'm worried about everyone else having a good time or getting their job done, or not having to micromanage something and worry about everyone else's life and feeling so much when you're in the midst of your own race. And so my comfort pace, let's go back to that. It involves no risks. So it's been such a process to learn to push past it into the unknown and just give up some of that control of, maybe it doesn't work out, but you don't know until you push into that unknown. It's been a huge shift, and knowing that there's always an aid station ahead, there's always a place to reset, there's always another tool in the toolkit you can use, like even a food from an aid station. When you're on an FKT, especially how I do them, which is often unsupported, you have no access to anyone once you start. So all the tools have to be with you, which means you have to be smart and not like burn them all up or get yourself in a situation where you don't have a tool that can fix things. But in an ultra, you can see your crew. You can ask for something. Someone can even run to the store. The aid station has stuff. So that's been a huge difference, but a really fun one to come through because I can be more creative. Like stomach issues. Okay, what are the tools I have with me? And what are the tools that my crew has, that pacers might have, or the aid station has, that I can use to apply to myself? It's not only what I have with me to solve a problem, it's what do we have access to and how can I solve a problem that way? So I think that's been a huge thing. And then on the last topic on pacing, is training my ability to switch gears has been a huge thing. So a lot of like really, really slow endurance level work with big surges in the middle. And it's not so much that I'm interspersing tempo or a high heart rate. I want near full recovery so that I have to enter that scary period of, now I got to push for 10 more minutes. Can I hold on? What's the right way to do this? Let go. It's going to be really hard. It's going to hurt, but you can get through the other side. So that's been a huge eye opener of giving myself those moments of unknown and to pushing into that, what I might call a dangerous pace on an FKT, but in an ultra and kind of how you have to run these days, it's been a really important way to practice that. All right, the next topic, nutrition, fueling for distance versus fueling for longevity. So this is a term I actually came up just now, I guess. So what I always used to do was fuel for longevity. What can I take that's sustainable to eat in a diet for 8 months? Maybe it's not perfect, but it's light enough, it's got enough calories, and it's easy enough to carry and cook. So it all works into the fact that it's got to be on my back, sometimes for 7-day stretches or even up to 9 days on the Colorado Trail unsupported. Check out that movie. It's called Free Outside. It's on Tubi for free, I think. And you can see me suffer. But that's been the biggest thing to shift, is when it's carb centric, working in that endurance zone. So, or even faster than that, you're above fat burning most of the time in these events, especially in hilly ones. You might have a break when you're going downhill where your heart rate drops into the 120s or so, but most of the time you're in that 130, 140 range, and carbs are key. I used to have a way more well-rounded diet, maybe not the best food, like plenty of sugar and junk, but well-rounded as far as like nuts and fats and like even protein and stuff out on the trail that would keep me going for, like, the Great Western Loop was 7,000 miles. And the key was, how do I stay fit and healthy and able to move for those 7 months? And when you're in an ultra, it's been very different because it's like that engine needs fire. Now we're turning it over so quickly that we just need to keep putting carbs in. It's like the most boring diet coming from through hiking. You can maybe have peanut M&Ms, but you can't have too many like ramen bombs, if you know what those are. So a ramen bomb is, you cook up a ramen noodles and then I like to put in some tuna, and then you sprinkle in instant mashed potatoes and mix it up, and it's like a casserole. It's very filling. It's not that great, but it's good enough. And what's interesting is I was very drawn to salty foods back in my through hiking days, they're not over. I still do some of it. I'm going for the Appalachian Trail record this year. That'll be a through hike. But the interesting thing is I ate so much salt. I was drawn to salty foods. That dinner I just described, extremely salty. And the funny thing is, like, now I've had a sweat test and done all the science around ultra running and stuff too, is my sweat rate's high and my salt content of my sweat is high. So I'm losing so much salt. It's just interesting to see my body knew that. I didn't know it mentally. I couldn't put a finger on it, but it was like my body's already craving what it needs. And so I've had to build that into race plans because I can't just eat salty foods out there. In fact, most carbs don't come in salty foods. So some of my sodium is from my water that I'm drinking with electrolytes, and the other part is from salt pills. Salt pills would have been something I never considered and used in the past. It's like finding this whole other kit of like toolkit to use. And that's why I think through hikers should look at ultra running and ultra running should look at through hikers, because I think the crossover there is really big. Like a through hiker's ability to drink water when they get to a water source and not have to carry so much, or have things accessible so they never have to take their pack off. These are things that that trail runners could definitely learn. And then the things that through hikers can learn is this fueling approach, salt pills, some of the different tools out there, and even like running vest style, packing style of taking this so that it's light as possible, fits to your body, and carries well. And you don't have to be running, but just that comfort level, I think you can learn from ultra running because they're doing a more uncomfortable thing and have found ways to be comfortable with it. So we are on nutrition, so we've really circled everything here. But just the planning metrics and what you're carrying is also very different. So if it's 3 to 4 hours between aid stations at Cocodona, it's very different than what I'm actually having to carry versus when I know I'm going through the night backpacking, through hiking, or doing an FKT. So that's been a big change of like letting go, knowing that I can survive out there with just calories. Like I can be warm enough, adjust my pace, things like that. I stay pretty hot, so I don't need as many layers versus when it's unsupported. You know, they always say people pack their fears. So you throw in way more than you need to in your pack, and you're just kind of stuck with that for however long you're out there. I did this on my first through hike when I broke an external frame pack rated for like 50 pounds, and it broke like 650 miles in. So that's been a big thing, this change of I don't need that much because I'm not out there for that long. It's like multiple 3 to 4 hour runs along the way and not worrying about the fact that the entirety of the run is 100 miles. So it's just breaking up into smaller and smaller chunks on a spreadsheet for, say, Cocodona versus a spreadsheet for the Appalachian Trail, Appalachian. We try to say them both because people up north complain about Appalachian and people down south complain about Appalachian. So we can't win here. But that's how it'll be. It'll be packing my food in bags for days. So each day will have its individual bag, so I'll know how much I have to eat, versus on Cocodona, each aid station. So it'll be a much smaller bag of nutrition, much less that's needed out there, and then the daytime to nighttime side. So I think that the downside of coming from this diet that is used to consuming a full diet, full palate, while covering so many miles a day, like I think I averaged a 50K per day for 208 days on the Great Western Loop. So you're fueling and moving all day, every day, versus running. It's changing the entire engine to that carb burning engine because your heart rate's a little bit higher and it runs more off carbs in that zone than when you're hiking a lot more and walking, especially if it's flat or downhill. Then you're just really turning over that fat, that some carbs, but mostly fat and protein to rebuild things. And I'm trying to just replenish and keep going versus 100 miler is like feel the engine. And by the time you get to the end, you're spent, everything, glycogen's depleted, and you have to re-up that. So that's just a mindset thing. And it's been a big practice with carbs and using very pointed carb mix too. I think you can see behind me, this table over here, it's all the, things I've ordered to make my own drink mix. So I have multiple flavors like passion fruit, lime, lemon, and then I use 2-to-1 glucose to fructose ratio and make my own drink mix, and it works pretty good. It's really nice because you can adjust the amount of flavor, like I have powdered lime flavor that I put in, so it's not so overwhelming, or it can be sweeter if you want. There's just a bunch of different things you can do. And so let's get into one of the last things, which is kind of sleep, recovery, and intangibles. So I'm very good at sleep deprivation, being unsupported or self-supported on things when you can't depend on pacers or other people has proven or has given me this experience where I can grasp onto things that are real. Like if I'm hallucinating, I can grasp onto, okay, the rock next to them, that's a real rock. I can tell I'm not worried about it. Hallucinating is supposed to happen. Just enjoy the ride. I'm very good at dirt naps and knowing when to take them. That's been really good. And I'm also content with the discomfort, but going back to the paces, not so much the discomfort at the higher paces that feel riskier because my mind is battling my body of like, well, we got to save ourselves because we're going to be out here for days when in reality it's only supposed to be out there for hours. Quick recovery, stacking miles, those have always been good, but at a slower pace. I think that's the hard thing of a 100-mile week now would have been a 350-mile week back in 2019, but it's just as taxing because I'm moving at a faster effort level for the most part. And also the last thing is this problem-solving mindset. So I've hit on this a few times, and it really comes from the unsupported nature of you got a problem, you got to solve it, only you can solve it. And that kind of goes back to the crew thing of that's the mindset that's so ingrained in me, and I've been able to solve everything on pretty much every long hike ever. But when that's how I'm used to solving things, it makes it hard to ask for help and use other resources. And so another thing is prioritizing sleep and recovery. Just knowing how to get up every day and cover 35 miles is great, but I don't need to do that every day. That's not what training theory points to, what a number of other studies do, which I love reading as well. The obsessive nature is there and really enjoyable, but it is hard to work against some of those ingrained almost habits of, yeah, I get up and I do it again today versus sleep, rest, and recovery are really big when training. And so that's been a huge thing and a point of emphasis to work on sleeping better, recovering better, prioritizing those things, and also not worrying so much about what everyone else is doing. Because when you're on a thru hike, you know the people behind, the people ahead, and you're right with the group a lot of the time if you're doing a general thru hike. So your pace is everyone else's pace and you kind of just do it together. But being able to go out and do your own training and not worry about Strava and stuff has been something to learn, because exercise and outdoor activities started so social for me. That's when I met probably my first true lifelong friends was while doing the Pacific Crest Trail when I was 20 years old. So let's just throw it all together. The key takeaways: hiking base, huge. It's helped me find new methods of cross training, and I know how to just be in an activity, go for it. Muscle strength, really good, just from all those hills. I mean, I got to add up how many thousands, millions, tens of millions of feet that I've climbed someday. But maybe I've always thought maybe when you get to heaven, if that's even a thing, you can like go into the history books or type into a computer all the questions that you want to know, because I think that would be a really funny way. There's like a library and it's like, how many feet of elevation gain did I have in my life? What did I do? How many times did I fart in my life? I just think that would be such a funny way to enter heaven or whatever. You can just like check out the history of what you did in your life. You get like your stat line, the back of your baseball card that you can walk around and talk to all your other heavenites or whatever they call them. But then the biggest thing that I feel like I've had to work on is combining like the skills that were very ingrained and habitual with the skills that are required to cross over into ultra running, trail running, and that too. And just being comfortable with that middle ground of, I don't have the same background in history as some of these pro runners that ran in college and stuff, but I have an equally impactful and important background here, and just moving to make that middle ground smaller by applying some of the training techniques and running quicker. So it's been a fun process. I thought I would just share kind of how I think about training, how I think about applying my own background, and maybe you can take that forward and apply your own. This podcast is always brought to us by johng.com. And so I'm actually releasing a pretty cool thing with them. on April 1st. So if you listen to this before then, make sure to put in your calendar a reminder to check out johng.com on April 1st. And if you listen to it after, go check out johng.com. It's a really cool thing. I think I'll be announcing it on Instagram soon or around April. So check out there. Also, garagegrowngear.com. Thanks for supporting us. It's a marketplace for small businesses. So they have packs, they have sleeping bags, they have sleeping pads, they have shoes, socks, food, intangibles, trowels. If you are a runner who doesn't know how to dig your own hole out there, they got trowels that weigh like less than an ounce. It's a really cool marketplace, so check them out. And I am traveling a ton. I'm going down to do a Cocodona training camp, and then I am going to a wedding, and then I'm going to Gorge Waterfalls. And so it's just going to be a whirlwind. I'm going to be trying to fit in some training, but luckily how I scheduled it was so that I could fit in this training camp. And then it's like 2 weeks, or about a week and a half. It's going to be a little harder to run as high a volume as I want to, at least. So I'm just getting a huge training stimulus up front. And then I'm not so worried about it after that. Got a few more things to iron out for Cocodona, specifically working on a little nutrition, but I actually went to the feed and I bought every single gel that they have. So all the different brands, not all the flavors, I don't think, but I've been trying them. I think I need to put together like a video because some aren't great, some are great. It's different for everyone, but it's been kind of funny to just be like, wow, okay, that's a taste that they went with on here. And then you try another and it's like, whoa, that was way different, smoother, good. Yeah. And it's kind of funny. There's just like a pile of wrappers when I get back from, I just was a 12-hour race in Idaho and trying out some nutrition, got back and I kept all the wrappers so I could add them up. But it was just like a mountain of different brands there, which is kind of funny, but my stomach seems to handle most gels, which is fine. They're not the best, but they do the job. All right, that is all I have for you today. So like, subscribe, 5-star reviews. Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys. Stay elite, my friends.